The following is a production of 954sports.com.
And you know, I've had a lot of time to do some thinking of late. I really have. I'm Matt Levine. I hope you've had an awesome week as we head into the weekend. Thanks for joining me, being part of all that I've got going on the YouTube station for 954 Sports. Let me adjust this. .com. All right. Ready to rock and roll and talk about what is the greatest rivalry in sports. Now, this can be argued to, as they say, the cows come home, right? It's an argument that you can make as to what constitutes the greatest rivalry in sports, where it exists. You can throw all the W's in, right? Where, why, when, what, throw the H in, the how. They all apply to what makes the greatest rivalry in sports. A couple other nuggets you want to throw in, right? You got team sports. Of course, you've got the big four here in North America being football, Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, hockey, National Basketball Association, hoop. And then you've got the big individual sports, the popular ones, from tennis to golf to boxing and beyond. You've got rivalries that will be determined by geographic regions, pockets from as small as towns to cities, counties, as large as regions, countries. Geography plays a role. History plays a role. How long does the rivalry go back? Significant moments. When were the significant moments that made it a rivalry? There's give and take in every great rivalry. It really is. Now, what I'm going to do is just cut to the chase and give you my number one, numero uno. And then I'll support why I think this is the greatest rivalry in sports. And then I'll give you some others that would round out an unofficial, official, back to unofficial, top five. So my number one, that's firm. The other 2 through 5, they're not in any specific order. I'll just BS about them, and I'll hope that you'll just listen to it and come up with your own educated opinion, or maybe even agree with me. So, as I said, I'm going to cut to the chase. Greatest rivalry in sports, no other than this one. The New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox. As Michael Kay would say, the Yankees play-by-play announcer, the team to the left with the interlocking NY to the right. You've got the familiar logo of those Boston Red Sox. This is one old rivalry. It really is. Goes back to April 26th, 1901, the first game ever played. Did you know the Yankees back then were actually the Baltimore Orioles? They would move to New York and become the Highlanders in 1903. Shortly after there, would become the New York Yankees as we know them now. Red Sox, at the time they played the Orioles, who would soon again become the Yankees in 01. They were the Boston Americans in 03. They would become the Red Sox as we know them today. So they've played a total of 2,250 games in 119 years. The Yankees lead the all-time series with 1,216 wins. The last time they played, back on September 9th of last year, Yankees won 5-0. Or the Yankees win. Okay, enough of that. Meanwhile, like every great rivalry, there are chapters. There is no doubt about that. This rivalry begins with the chapter, the curse of the Bambino. If you don't know about it, let me explain. If you do know about it, well, I'll fill you in. Maybe jog your memory on some things, or you'll just have to hear about it again. That guy's the same guy. At one time, he was a Red Sox. pre-1916, the great Babe Ruth, see him to the left, a great slugger and a great ace. I'm not going to tell you about his pitching exploits. You can do that on your own. Go research it. You'll see what a great pitcher he was for the Red Sox. And then became solely a slugger for the Yankees. How did he become a Yankee? Well, the Red Sox owner, Harry Frazee, also dabbled in producing plays. And he had an idea for a musical called No No Nanette, Needed Cash. Sold Babe Ruth to the Yankees for $125,000 to produce the play, which became a flop. Babe Ruth became a sensation. The curse of Bambino began. The Sox had won the World Series prior to 1916 a handful of times. There you see it. In fact, they won the first ever World Series in 2003. They won 5 of the first 15. And then they got rid of Babe, and the winning stopped. As for the Yankees, the winning started. You betcha. Babe becomes a Bronx Bomber. The Yankees win their first title in 23 and win a record for sports franchises anywhere in the world that still exist. 27 with the last in 2009. We'll talk about that 09 win a little bit later on. So there you have it. 27 world champions, time world champions. First one coming again right after they get the Sultan of SWAT. Yankees producing one legendary team after another. This one in 27. Title team famously known as Murderers Row. See Babe Ruth, part of that Murderers Row with the likes of another Hall of Famer, a couple other Hall of Famers like Lou Gehrig. Yankees continued the magic into the 30s and 40s with the likes of the great Joe DiMaggio and his 56-game hitting streak. To divert for a moment, a quick minute, that 56-game hitting streak I don't think ever gets broken. Another sports record that I don't think ever gets broken, and this one timely, because of the death of Don Shula, may the great football coach from down here in South Florida rest in peace. The all-time winningest coach in the NFL and the coach of the only perfect team with the title, 17-0, 72 Dolphins. Those two records, I really don't think ever get broken, although we know records are meant to be broken. So DiMaggio helped make magic for the Yankees in the Bronx. And look at that great picture of the old Yankee Stadium with all the mystique captured in that brilliant photo right behind home plate. I love the old Yankee Stadium. I'll tell you one thing. Unfortunately, if there was a battle for the best stadium in this rivalry, the Red Sox get it. Fenway. All the charm, mystique, tradition that you want in a sports venue and in a baseball park. I love Fenway. Not a big fan of the new Yankee Stadium. Let's move on. So the Yankees continue their run with the marvelous teams of the 50s. Guys like the Mick, Yogi, Whitey, pictured there. Did continue into the 60s, 61. Most famous year, I'd say, that century for the Bronx Bombers, highlighted by the M&M Boys, Maris and Mantle chasing Babe Ruth's all-time single-season record of 60 home runs, and Maris successfully capped it off by getting the 61st and beating Mantle to the punch, as he'll live in the Hall of Fame forever by doing it, what I'd say is the old-fashioned way and earning it. Let's not talk about the steroid era right now. Let's not. We're talking about the greatest rivalry in sports. Again, belongs to these two squads, the Yanks and Red Sox. From the 50s and 60s, the Yankees took their show into the 70s. Continued winning titles. I remember that Topps card right there. Right? They were saluting nicknames of the 70s for teams, and the Yankees were known, of course, as the Bronx Zoo, with the likes of Reggie Jackson, the straw that stirred the drink, Thurman Munson, Goose Gossage, Ron Guidry, Billy Martin, Chris Chambliss, Willie Randolph, Craig Nettles. May Thurman Munson rest in peace also. Died way too young. Take another look at the Bronx Zoo. Black and white. See Reggie and Munson right there. I believe that's Roy White to the right of Munson. You're on your screen. Really a quiet decade for the Yankees in the 80s, with the exception of probably my all-time favorite Yankee. Never a champion, but a champion in every Yankee fan's heart who grew up a kid in the 80s, I would think. And that's the hitman, Donnie Baseball, right? Don Mattingly. Love Mattingly. But the magic came back to the Yankees in the 90s thanks to the core four. Derek Jeter, Andy Pettitte, Mariano Rivera, Jorge Posada. Those guys led the Yankees back to glory, picking up a handful of rings in the 90s, starting with that great series in 96 against the Atlanta Braves. Love this picture here. Right? Yankees do it Beatles style. And then in 2009, the Yankees won their 27th World Championship, and that was the last one for the franchise. Hopefully, the chase for 28 begins in 2020 sooner than later as we wait to defeat COVID-19 and get our sports back, including our baseball, right? Love that baseball to start up. Red Sox, meanwhile, no championships until 2004 when they finally snapped the curse of the Bambino. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the Red Sox, they had plenty of success and some noteworthy teams that did some winning, despite the curse of the Bambino and the lack of championships. Of course, you had Teddy Ballgame, the splendid splinter, Ted Williams. What a great hitter he was, and a Boston legend. From Williams, you go to the likes of Carl Yastrzemski carrying the torch as the next Red Sox great. Throughout the 60s into the 70s, there was magic with Carlton Fisk's home run in the 75 World Series, willing it out of the ballpark. From Fisk, you had Rice, who battled those Bronx Zoo Yankee teams in the 70s with his squad. Great ball player, Jim Rice, you know. Flies under the radar, really underrated. From Rice, you go to the Rocket and Boggs. Carried those teams in the 80s. The unfortunate incident, Bill Buckner, Mookie Wilson, the 86 World Series. You know the deal by now. But the Red Sox, they would have, again, some great ball players in their franchise. And some absolute legends, but no titles. Until 2004. When the curse of the Bambino was finally snapped, and the Red Sox won their first World Championship since dealing off Babe Ruth for $125,000 for a crappy musical back in 1916. Talk about a curse. But I guess like all records, all curses are meant to be broken. Now, in my lifetime, which started in 73, there have been so many memorable moments between the Sox and the Yanks that have simply been wicked awesome. Where do you start? Bucky Dent's home run, 78. The Yankees with a magical run in the second half of the season to overcome a near insurmountable deficit at the bottom of the standings in the AL East in the final weekend of the season, thanks to that home run by Dent that catapulted the Yankees to a big season-ending series. In Boston, they would take the division, go on to their second straight World Championship. The great Bucky Dent. From Bucky Dent, of course, you've got Aaron Bleepin Boone. Aaron Bleepin Boone going yard off the knuckleballer Tim Wakefield. With the walk-off home run to settle the 2003 American League Championship Series, the Yankees go on to the World Series. I remember that moment like yesterday. Felt like I was flying on cloud nine. All of New York did. What a great Yankee moment that was. And of course, you have the brawls. A-Rod and Veritek a year later, when A-Rod was in his first year as a Yankee. You read the lips. You don't have to be a genius or a lip reader to know what he said there twice, right? Not nice. Earmuffs. And then, of course, from the Veritek A-Rod brawl, you had the maddening moment, which still has me scratching my head as to why Pedro went mental against the 72-year-old Don Zimmer. Don Zimmer, what a gem he was. Old Zim. Such a valuable component of those Yankees 90s championship teams as Joe Torre's right-hand man as bench coach. I remember Derek Jeter gave him an Army helmet at one time because he got hit with a foul ball sitting in the dugout. Had all kinds of fun with the Yankees. And then in 2004, of course, still pains me to see that, the Red Sox snapped the curse of the Bambino with the classic comeback of the ages, down 3-0 in the ALCS. A year after Aaron Bleepin Boone beat them, they won 4 straight, became the first ever team to do that in baseball history. Down from 3-0 in a championship series, would go on to the World Series. They would win it, and again snap the curse of the Bambino. So, Red Sox and Yankees, my all-time greatest rivalry, bar none. Another cool component of the rivalry goes to the geography, right? Kind of a heat map, and I'll show you a better map in a moment. You see the line of demarcation that's going through the middle of Connecticut, the battleground state between Massachusetts and New York for Yankee and Red Sox fandom. Take a look at this one. Slices right through the Constitution State, my former home state, hometown of Stamford, in the bottom left corner kind of that frying pan handle of Connecticut, right? Definitely goes through the middle of Connecticut. North of that, you go into New England, it's Red Sox country. South, you go into the tri-state area of New York, all the way to the Empire State Building and beyond. And it's Yankee country. So it's just a tremendous rivalry. I love that Connecticut kind of slices the rivalry in half with, again, the unofficial. I'm abusing that one, right? Got to put that one away for another day now. Line of demarcation. As for the other great rivalries in sports, let's take a look. This one I think would have you saying, why is this in your top 5? Why is this in your top 10 maybe? Why is it on any top list? A little biased, but I'll explain. The NFC East. Stack the NFC East up against any sports rivalry. On any given Sunday between these 4 squads, you have just about every single factor that makes a great rivalry. I know the geography doesn't match with the Cowboys being in Dallas and the rest of the teams like the Philly Eagles, the New York Giants, and the Washington Redskins. They're all an Amtrak right away, right? Quick one, a couple hours from each other. But nonetheless, on any given Sunday, when any of these teams square off, you never know what's going to happen. There's usually just something memorable about the games. They come down to the finish. And the fact that they play each other twice a year, and it seems like there's always, a little inkling of any one of these four teams in any given season by the halfway point of having a chance to win the season. I mean, look how bad they all were last year. I just think it makes up everything great about a rivalry, especially in today's National Football League. So that would make my top five. Any matchup between any respective NFC East team on the gridiron. Number three, again, it's after number one, it's just 2 through 5 in any order you want to take, but it's my other ones that would make the list. The great Michael Jordan, pictured there. Look at MJ, his airness, rise to the occasion on that jump shot for the North Carolina Tar Heels, who have one of the great rivalries in sports, top fiver, against the Duke Blue Devils. You get everything in this rivalry. Get the Cameron Crazies, get Chapel Hill, Durham, not too far from each other on Tobacco Road, in a great part of the country. Two outstanding academic institutions. Basketball played to the hilt of the finest proportions in college basketball. You've got Dean, you've got Coach K, you've got great fan bases, great alumni, great moments, and banners that fly from each of their gymnasiums. The best of the best in college basketball and in the Atlantic Coast Conference. It's a great rivalry. And it's on my bucket list. Have to get to that Cameron Indoor Arena Gymnasium Fieldhouse. Check it out. Just one game. I want to see the Tar Heels and Blue Devils go at it. One game, one time. Don't care where I sit. Just want to enjoy that experience. Talked about individual sports. There were some great individual rivalries in sports. In sports like golf, Arnold and Jack, tennis, Martina, Chrissy Everett. On the men's side, how about McEnroe and Connors? That's the first one that comes to mind. Sampras Agassi. But I didn't choose tennis. I didn't choose golf. I chose boxing. And I chose these two. Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier. Ali, perhaps one of the greatest athletes of all time, period. Frazier and Ali, two of the greatest boxers of all time. When there is a heavyweight rivalry like this in boxing, not only does it occupy center stage for the sport, but it occupies center stage for all of sports. I was too young to remember this great rivalry. Just heard about it growing up, read about it, seen the fights, read about all the stories and, all the great things that came from Super Fight 1, which Frazier won in the unanimous decision in 71. Ali would take the next two matchups of the three in 74 and 75, respectively. 75, they capped it off with the Thriller in Manila. A rivalry for the ages between two great champions. That gets in my top 5 list. And finally, I'm probably the least fan, I wouldn't say I'm a big fan of this rivalry. I have a lot of respect for it. I'm a bigger fan with my alma mater's rivalry, which is a time-honored rival with Arizona State against the University of Arizona, their football matchup. But it is not as high profile as this one is. So what I'm saying is I have mad respect for the Ohio State football rivalry. It goes back to 1897. You talk about a rivalry that is divided by geography, state line, Ohio and Michigan. And the great thing about this rivalry is It goes 365, 24/7, right, for a few hours. Each fall on a Saturday afternoon. One game a year on the gridiron. Between these two. You know you're going to get one game a year. And it's a special one. And it's a special one to those two states in that region of the country and all their alum. So there you have it. Those are my top 5 rivalries in sports. But again, folks, all about the Yanks and Red Sox, who, by the way, took that rivalry last year to England. They skipped the pond and had a jolly good time. In London, Yanks won the series. I think they won the Saturday game of that weekend series 19-5, if I remember correctly. If you're going to represent, bring the best rivalry you have in baseball and showcase it overseas in London. That was a lot of fun. Anyway, again, it's the Yanks and Red Sox. That's the best rivalry in sports. In fact, I think this quote just says it all as we go back to Carl Yastrzemski. Red Sox versus Yankees is the greatest rivalry in sports. Well said. In fact, I'm going to let Yaz take me out on that note.